Now let's get to the bottom of all of this with Jeff Bell. He's the president of Broward Sheriff's Office Deputies Association, who is also a sheriff's deputy himself. It's good to see you, sir. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. These new reports that came out, absolutely, the new reports that came out now have a total of 4 sheriff's deputies who did not enter that school building as the shooting was taking place. What do you know about this tonight?
I've heard rumors about that report myself, but I have nothing to substantiate that any of those claims are factual at this time.
Well, Scott Peterson, let's start with him because he has resigned. He was apparently behind a police vehicle with his gun drawn at the time that other officials showed up at the scene. Can you walk us through what protocol is for this type of active shooter situation, Jeff?
Well, for the active shooter, Deputy Peterson being the first officer on scene, he did what he was trained to do at the beginning, for the first minute, responded directly to the area where shots were being fired, called out the location, called in other support units that were arriving for backup. But at that point, he stopped there of what he needed to do. As law enforcement officials, we know that every day when we go to work that there's a chance that we may not come home to our family members. And we accept that responsibility. And when we hear an active shooter, I don't care if it's within a school, a mall, a house, or an office building, when you are the first person there on scene, every second that you delay going into that building and every single gunfire that you hear from inside that building, that means that there's another innocent life being lost. And it's unacceptable not to go inside that building. We know that risk when we put the uniform on every single day, and we have to live up to that oath that we take.
Now, do you know Officer Peterson?
No, I do not. I've only had one conversation with him. And
what occurred in that conversation?
Just to brief him what was about to transpire within the next hour in terms of the administrative moves that were going to happen in terms of being suspended without pay, and an internal affairs investigation would start.
Oh, the Coral Springs police are apparently the ones who are talking, and that's why we got this new report about the 3 Broward deputies who showed up and also didn't enter the building. So why would the Coral Springs officers express their frustration if they had entered the building or if this hadn't occurred? Doesn't that, given the fact that we have, again, 17 dead and we have more than a week has transpired, we still don't have the clear tick-tock on what happened? That seems a little much, don't you think, given the public outcry here?
Well, given the public outcry, I can say that there was a lot of chaos on scene that night. I don't doubt the actions of some of the Coral Springs police officers that were there that day. However, I don't know enough information to comment if those were the first officers on scene or if those officers that went into the building first from Coral Springs, they came out and then they saw additional deputies. So I don't have enough information to comment at that at this time.
Sheriff Israel basically echoed what you said about how this guy Peterson should have engaged the shooter. You're there, shots are ringing out, you don't stand outside, you go in. And that's like the firefighters at 9/11, they went up in the building when everybody else was leaving. That's your job, that's what you do. That's the danger of being a police officer. But you actually have made comments about the school board in Broward County, and you lay some blame, frankly, on them for what happened. Explain that to us.
Yes, I do. I think that's the one entity in this whole conversation that has not been brought up is some of the fault that I put on the Broward County School Board. For years, they know that the schools have been soft targets, and they claim that they want to have better police presence inside the schools and they want tougher security, but yet they do not want to cough up the money to pay for that better security and fortify their schools and have better designs. They don't want that. And then when they are fortunate enough to have a school resource deputy on scene, an armed police presence, a lot of the liberal thinking principals that are on campus there, they don't want the police officers making arrests on campus, and they don't want the drugs to be found on campus, and they don't want the warrants to be served on campus because it looks like there's bad stats at the school. So I place a lot of blame on the school board with that and some of the programs that they've initiated with the state attorney and the sheriff's office in the years past. For example, the Promise program. Nobody wants to fill the jails with juveniles. Every police officer will agree on that. So the Promise program is an intervention program where we can stop filling the juvenile jails with kids, and we can get them into some alternative programs. But the problem is with them, when that program started, we took all discretion away from the law enforcement officers to effect an arrest if we choose to. Now, there's a lot of parents out there that are screaming for help in terms of mental health services.
Well, it seems like that was the case here. I mean, right. Well, we had 23 calls go to the Broward Sheriff's Office about this family. Some were about Nicholas Cruz's brother. Others were about Cruz, and still, you know, including calls regarding his potential for violence. And again, you're the expert here. You represent the union here. But 23 calls to one house. And you add that with the FBI tips that they got in 2016 and as early as in November and apparently another one in February. This is wild stuff. I mean, red flag after red flag after red flag.
It is. They are looking into that right now with those calls, but I can tell you it's not an uncommon thing where we spend 2, 3, 4, 5 times a week that we respond to the same house for the same problem over and over again. And so what your limitations are what? The only way you can, I mean, you could sit down with Nicholas Cruz, correct? I mean, I imagine he didn't seem too bright. I imagine you could sit down and just ask him questions. Can I look around? Right? Could I look around? Do you have any guns? Can I see where they are? Can I see where they're stored? That conversation, do you have any idea whether that took place? I do not have any of that information right now as part of an internal affairs investigation.
Yeah,
it is, but I'm not privileged to comment on that because it's an ongoing investigation. That would be violating state statute by commenting on that.
The NRA demonization that's going on right now is unlike anything I've ever seen. I mean, they're trying to basically take them off television, kill off all the businesses that, you know, take their ads and so forth, give discounts to NRA members. What's your sense on that?
I firmly believe this is not a gun issue. I've said this from day one, and I'll hold that belief until the day I die. It's not the gun that's the problem. It's the person behind the gun that is the problem. And the problem that we face here today is not going to be a simple fix. And I'm afraid to say that I don't even think that there's going to be an outcome that's going to fix this problem, because until we can link the mental health records into the criminal background checks that we do to purchase a firearm, we're not going to see if a person had a mental health issue. So that has to be resolved with the Medical Association and the HIPAA law violations to release that information.
Well, Sheriff Israel,
that needs to be addressed.
I hear you, but Sheriff Israel yesterday or today said, what I think we need to do in America is something different, have less guns. I think he means fewer. Less guns on our streets, not more guns. So he's taken a different view from you. That's the sheriff.
Yeah, he is. He is my boss and he is my sheriff. Correct. He is my boss and he is my sheriff, and he does sign my paychecks. But that doesn't mean that I have to have the same opinions as the sheriff does. I think we need to intervene with the people that hold the gun, not the gun itself. So until we address the real problem, which is the mental health issue, and the attitude of the state attorney's office of releasing these people out on the street, nothing's going to change.
Deputy Sheriff Bell, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We'll be following every aspect of this ongoing investigation.